What's going on, Yu-Gi-Oh fans? PlotArmorCards in the house, and today I'm going to be coming to you with my updated December Banlist deck profile. Relinquished is something that's super dope, super fun to mess around with. The ability to just snatch your opponent's monsters, I think, is super dope. So I wanted to go ahead and share this with you guys. So first of all, I like to run 3 copies of Relinquished, super dope card. Basically, you summon it with Black Illusion Ritual, and then you have the ability to snatch your opponent's monster, and then it does have some added really nice effects. Any battle damage you take inflicts equal effect damage to your opponent. Plus, if this card would be destroyed by battle, you can destroy that equipped monster instead. Next, to support that, I like to run 3 copies of Millennium Eyes Illusionist, which I think is the best supporting card in the entire archetype. This thing... Quick effect, you can discard an effect monster your opponent controls, equip that target to an Eyes Restrict Fusion monster or a Relinquished you control as if it was equipped by that monster's effect. That's crazy. If an Eyes Restrict Fusion monsters or a Relinquished is special summon and this card, and add this card from your graveyard to your hand, this is not optional. You can only use each effect once per turn. So really good support, just being able to just equip and just run wild with some of the cards. For example, Millennium Eyes Restrict, I do like that. This next one might be a little bit controversial, but I'm running triple Allure of Darkness, so I thought this would be best at 3. Golden Eyes Idol, basically the effect that I care the most about. It does help you see your opponent's hand, but the one I care the most about is where is it? You can target one effect monster your opponent controls, equip that effect monster to one Eyes Restrict or Relinquished monster you control if this card is banished or sent to the graveyard by a card effect. So basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking advantage of Lure of Darkness's banishing effect, then chaining this in order to snatch one of your opponent's monsters, equipping it to maybe a Relinquished or Millennium Eyes Restrict in the future. Next, I like to play triple Sphere Kribos. Basically, it's like a mini hand trap where you can change your opponent's monsters to defense mode if they declare an attack. Also, when you're ritual summoning, it definitely does help because you can banish it from your grave as one of the requirements, and Relinquish only has the one requirement. So it definitely does help save your hand from getting, thinned out as much as possible. Next, I like to play 1 copy of Manju of the 10,000 Hands. This is a great searcher, great way to just add either ritual monster or ritual spell from your deck to your hand. The reason I'm running it at 1, though, is I feel like I do have 3 copies of pre-prep, 2 copies of preparation of rites, and then the 3 Allure of Darkness. I used to run Manju at 2. I think I used to run it at 2 at least, or maybe even 3. But the reason for that was Ash Blossom was really going crazy. And so I used to run this to essentially bait an Ash Blossom. And then from there, once that Ash Blossom is gone, I know I could pop off other combos and stuff without being interrupted. That's still something if you guys want to mess around with, but I think it is a dope searcher. But right now I would say, in at least the locals I go to, the type of hand traps that I see the most are the bestial stuff. I do see a lot of DD Crow. Once in a while you run into Ash Blossom, but I don't think it's as much. But obviously if you're playing 3, some people will have that side decked. So it is something that that is worth being wary about, something that's worth being concerned with. So just so you know. Next, I like to play 2 copies of Tour Guide from the Underworld, which lets you special summon a level 3 or Fiend monster, which I have Sangan for, and then the Sangan can help me search. I used to really like these cards, really like these when Verti Anaconda was a thing, because this was a 1-card Verti Anaconda combo, which would in turn bring out your boss monster. That was crazy for me. Verti Anaconda is no longer a thing, as you know, it is on the ban list. So I am maybe thinking about moving this around a bit, but I do like the fact that it does spam a bunch of monsters on the field, which in turn you still can take advantage of. So might be worth keeping in the deck still. But there are some things like in the side deck that I have mentioned that may be worth just switching around for if you feel like that's the way to go. I would say that's up to your preference and what you like. But moving forward to the spell cards, first of all, Relinquished Fusion. I really love this card. I really like the fact that this got a fusion. Fusion summon 1 Eyes Restrict Fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing materials from your hand, field, and or graveyard. During your main phase, you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target 1 effect monster your opponent controls, equip that target to an Eyes Restrict Fusion monster, or Relinquish you control as if it is equipped by that monster's effect, and you can only use 1 per turn. So really good. I would say this thing, and this thing have the insane ability to just clear your opponent's board and just equip your Millennium Eyes Restrict with everything your opponent has, and you can go in for a pretty nice win there. Next, I like to play triple Black Illusion Ritual. I might cut this down to 2 just because it is recyclable with these cards here. So you need that in order to summon your Relinquished, essentially, is what I'm saying. But these two do have the ability to recycle. For example, add a ritual spell from your deck to your hand, then add one ritual monster from your deck or graveyard to your hand whose name is listed on the ritual spell. Sorry, it's this one. Add one level 7 or lower ritual monster from your deck to your hand, then you can add one ritual spell from your graveyard. Yeah, it's this one that recycles. So it's possible that you'd like to run this at 2. But I kind of like it just because it does help search. So I kind of like it at 3, so that's something to mess around with. Next, 2 copies of Super Poly. Your boss monster here only takes Millennium Relinquish plus 1 effect monster. So if you got Relinquish on the field, very easy to just snatch your opponent's monster in order to make the summon, and then use a bunch of other things to snatch the rest of their monsters. I like that. It's super dope combo. Next, also something to mention. I do run like things like Garura, Starving Venom, Fusion Dragon. So if you don't want to go for this right away, I guess you do have the ability to run a couple other Super Poly monsters. Next, the Allure of Darkness. Draw 2 cards, banish 1 card, banish 1 dark monster from your hand. So basically, all of our monsters are dark except for the 1 copy of Manju. And then if this thing gets banished, you can take advantage of its effect. So I really do like that. Next, I like to play the 1 instant fusion, pay 1,000 life points, special summon 1 level 5 or lower fusion monster from your extra deck. This thing is great. This thing is freaking great. If you do this in the beginning, basically you have the ability to just ward off things like hand traps and whatnot. Plus, if you're going second, you do have the ability to just stop some of their annoying effects that your opponent would probably be doing. Next, 1 copy of Harpy's Feather Duster. Spell and trap removal is very important when your opponent's going to be running things like Dimensional Fissure, Macrocosmos, and I know Mystic Mine is no longer a thing. People are still running not Necro World. What's that thing called? Necro Valley. Necro Valley, the field spell for the Gravekeepers. It's really annoying, and yeah, you'd want to get rid of some. And there's a lot of floodgates out there that are spells and traps. So yeah, this is definitely necessary, I would say, in the main deck at least. And then for my own floodgates, I opted to go more for floodgates than hand traps in this deck, just because I feel like that's what most people do, and I think floodgates are a little bit more successful, in my experience at least, and shutting down things like Tier Element, Sprite, etc., etc. But if you're just messing around at home, of course, you could switch this out for whatever hand trap you see fit, or etc., etc., whatever you want to mess around with, right? So I like to play 3 copies of Gozen Match. You can only control 1 attribute of monster. We all have darks except for the 1 Manju, right? So I think we're good. Next, I decided to go for 2 copies of Soul Drain, just because it shuts down your opponent's graveyard and the banished field, but it also has that ability to do that for you, so it can kind of screw your Sphere Kribo and your Golden Eyes Idol if you're not careful. So that's why I decided to go with 2, and you just kind of have to know how to play around it with this deck. So just something to be wary of, I would say. For the extra deck, 3 copies of Millennium Eyes Restrict. It just takes a Relinquish plus an effect monster, insane effect. Once per turn, when your opponent activates a monster effect, quick effect, you can target 1 effect monster your opponent controls or in the graveyard. Equip that target to this card you control. This card gains attack and defense equal to that equipped monster's. Monsters that equip monster's name cannot attack. Also, their effects are on the field, and their activated effects are negated, so that's crazy. Next, we got Thousand Eyes Restrict. I might actually cut this to 1, maybe even just cut it out in general, because I haven't brought it out yet. I've been messing with this deck for a while. I don't really bring it out too much. Once in a while I bring it out with Instant Fusion, but it's almost never this card. So this for sure probably will be cut to 1. Just something you guys are know. So I am running Access Code Talker, but I also may mess around with a couple other Link monsters there. But and then for the Super Poly stuff, Garura, Starving Venom, Fusion Dragon, and then I ran 2 copies of Relinquished Anima. Of course, basically similar effect to Relinquish, so that you snatch your opponent's monster. Link Karibo, since we're running a couple different Link 1s, or level 1s, sorry. I think it's useful just to have. And then Access Code Talker, this is the OTK type thing, you know. Celine, Queen, Master of Magicians, we're running a decent amount of spellcasters, so I feel like it's worth it to mess around with. Nightmare Phoenix, just because it's a Link 2 and you can still take advantage of Tour Guide, and then Sangan if you'd please. 1 Cross Sheep, just because it has a decent effect. Basically, if you summon a ritual monster where it points to, you can draw 2 cards and discard 1 card. Or Fusion, you can special summon a level 4 lower monster from your grave. It's just a good extender, I'd say. And then lastly, 1 Dark, the Dark Charm of Gloomy. I feel like it's pretty decent in this deck, just because Dark is pretty prevalent. You can just take your opponent's monsters in order to do that stuff. Plus, it stays with the theme of just snatching your opponent's monster. For the side deck, so this isn't necessarily a side deck. This is just kind of like a shout out to, like, hey, these are definitely cards that are worth messing around with, and definitely if you feel like these are the way to go, it's worth taking a look at, right? So I wanted to shout out just Djinns in general. Djinns are super dope. I used to run them, but I kind of can't find a spot to put them in this deck. If I feel like maybe this is too much, I may switch in maybe some Djinns. We'll see how that goes. But the level 1 specifically, when you ritual summon a monster, you can banish this card from your graveyard. As one of the materials, basically, the monster ritual summon with this card is unaffected by trap effects. Doing that combined with skill drain is kind of crazy. I'm not gonna lie, because that makes it completely shuts down your opponent's field, and then it makes your monster impervious. So then you can still snatch theirs, get insane attack boosts, etc., etc. Mystic Piper is also a dope one. You contribute this card to draw, reveal one card. If the card is a level 1 monster card, you can draw one more card. So it is a nice, I would say, just searcher, not searcher specifically, but draw. The ability to draw from it is nice, but I feel like if you're going to run this, probably run couple more level 1s, right? So this is a level 2, this is a level 3, level 4. Might be worth it to run a couple more level 1s. Next, I wanted to shout out the Kaijus. Kaijus are just a dope thing in general, especially with Relinquished, because you could just tribute your opponent's annoying monster for a Kaiju, and then you can use Relinquished to snatch it. I feel like that's an entirely different deck to begin with, so when I'm playing Relinquished Kaiju, I feel like I make that a separate deck as compared to like what I'm trying to do here is like more of a pure Relinquished, if you could say that, because we are running a couple other cards. But this is definitely something worth shouting out. Radion obviously is a dark one, so it does work with stuff like Goes in Match, even though if your opponent doesn't have a dark monster, it kind of screws you, right? But plus you could use things like just any other Kaiju. I would recommend you use the stronger Kaijus, just because it will boost your Relinquish up a lot more. Plus, if you're using multiple Kaijus, Interrupted Kaiju Slumber will clear their field. Stuff like Illusionist, Faceless, Magician. I think it's dope because it lets you recycle from the grave, essentially, your boss monster. But I think it's a little bit too slow. So that's something that's worth taking a look at, I guess. But next, Nibiru, the Primal Being. It's similar to the Kaijus in the sense where it's going to clear your opponent's whole board. It's going to put that token, and then you can use Relinquish to steal that token. So it's worth shouting out. But I feel like a lot of decks these days, they have like outs to Nibiru, I would say, just built-in negates, etc., etc. So next, the Gravity Bind. You're Relinquished and your Millenniumized Restrict, plus you got all these Link monsters. It stops level 4 or higher monsters. Basically, I relegated this to a shout out just because that most people have like spell and trap removal in their main decks, and this isn't enough, like good enough, I would say, to warrant being in the main deck, at least in my opinion. Also, your opponent might have links or something and they could still attack you. So Branded, I've seen a lot of people run like Branded Despia type stuff with this, so special shout out for that. Opti Camouflage Armor, you can equip it to something like this after it gains a shitload of attack, and you can just attack your opponent directly. Secret Village of the Spellcasters will shut your opponent out of spell cards only if you control the spellcaster. So if you're thinking about this, might want to run a couple more spellcasters. But you do have basically this entire lineup here, but I think you need a little bit more in order to reliably run that. I wanted to talk about Dimensional Fissure and Macrocosmos, because technically you could use it, but I feel like it does screw you a bit, but it doesn't screw like you as much as it would screw other decks, in my opinion at least. So it's definitely worth looking at. Kinkabio also is nice because it lets you revive a level 1, which can essentially be, whatever you see fit, but I think it's worth a shout out. Also, Change of Heart. I don't know why I forgot to put it in there, but CHANGE of Heart. Just because it just came across to me as something that's dope, because it fits the theme of snatching your opponent's monster. That's the only reason. I don't know if it's going to be good or anything. It's not something I've tested, but it just fits the theme of stealing your opponent's monster. So I just threw it in there. But anyways, guys, this was my deck. You guys can let me know if you guys think of you think it's good, you think it's bad. Let me know in the comments down below. Anything you guys would add, anything you guys would take out, you guys can also let me know. After all, I am just another duelist trying to get my deck as good as possible, so any suggestions are always welcome. But anyways, guys, this is PlotArmorCards signing out for the day. If you like what you see, don't hesitate to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you in the next video.